welcome to another episode of the Tip Balls Podcast. I am your host, Sam Randazzo, and yes, our surroundings have changed. We are live from our new studio today for the first time. Round of applause for everybody involved. Took a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to get us here, but we are officially here and ready to break down the 2024 draft, which is in our own backyard. We got a lot to get into. We can't waste a lot of time, but we're going to waste a few minutes. To my right, the one and only Uncle Sam.
Hello.
And to my left, it is none other than our very own Mr. Zolo, Mike Palazzolo.
God bless. God bless.
Welcome,
everyone.
gentlemen.
Happy to be here.
Thoughts on the new studio off the rip? Let's hear it.
Overdue.
Zolo?
You knew it was going to be one word or less, right?
That's it. We're back on one word. You know what? How's your week been going so far? It's only Monday, so it can't be that bad. How's your weekend? Tell us. What's going on?
Living a dream.
Zolo, you?
Mondays are tough.
Tough day?
Mondays are
Rough
tough.
one?
Not rough, but it's just I had that dread yesterday that the Sunday scaries really set in yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
But we're good. It's draft week here. When I say here, I mean like literally 15 minutes from here, they're going to be picking players downtown. And there's a lot to like about this week. I'm excited. And I'm excited to be here. This looks great. I had nothing to do with this, by the way. I didn't do anything here. And I'm just happy to be here.
We do have to shout out somebody for making this all come together. Shout out to Uncle Sam. Otherwise, we would be in between four beige walls.
Shout out to Rigo and Raton.
And we can't leave out our last shout out. Back behind the computer yet again.
Should have been fired.
With his own, he's got such a high-tech little situation over here now. He's not on a folding table anymore.
The only word you can use for him is high.
That's why the Ricky Williams jersey's behind him.
The only
He's
word
stoned.
you can
And
use
if
for
you
you
notice
is
what's
fat,
in front of him,
but, you know.
if you
What was
notice,
that?
we're going to start off this episode with a bang. It's Bruce the Tugboat Venditti.
What's going on?
All right. I want to throw back real quick. I just want to say thanks again to Mike Davis. Great interview last week. Awesome episode. I think that we did a really nice job. I think he was an awesome guy to have in here as our first guest. And hopefully many more to come into the future. Now, with that being said, we need to get into the draft. Before we get into the draft, if you go to tipballs.com, Zolo wrote an impeccable blog about the Lions' new uniforms, which came out last Thursday. I wanted to get both of your guys' thoughts on it real quick before we get into draft talk. Bruce, you are a season ticket holder, so I will give you the right to chime in here. I want to know what you guys think of the new jerseys. Personally, I love the black. Okay? I know there's somebody at this table who does not love the black. I love the black. I love the stripes. I love the perforated numbers. Every single thing that is causing any sort of controversy, I personally love. I think it's clean. I think it's very nicely done. I think it's a great homage to the throwback feel that they're trying to do, but modernized just enough. And I also saw Denver's jerseys come out today, which I thought were a complete atrocity.
No, they're awesome.
The throwback is awesome. The throwback is
that's
awesome.
Orange Crush days. This is well beyond your guys'. You guys weren't even born yet.
The throwback is awesome. Everything about it, everything about their normal jerseys, didn't care for, didn't see anything great about them. In my opinion, Lions had the best jersey release of the offseason and executed it perfectly.
You're shaking your head. Go ahead. Want to hear it.
You have a black Lions hat on.
I like the white jersey.
I like the white jersey too. What do you like about it?
That's the only thing I like.
You don't like the blue jersey
No.
as someone that went to games in the Silver Dome?
You know what? I don't like what they did with the striping. You know, if you want to mimic the fucking
It's off the
Mustang.
cars,
Mustang.
whatever, dude.
It's awesome.
Just leave it alone, dude. It's not. Doesn't say football.
Oh, I disagree, 100%. I think it is
I
so
Totally
purely football.
don't think it says football.
I don't think I've heard a single bad thing about the jerseys so far.
That's
Besides
your
it.
opinion.
So it's interesting. You hate, it's interesting you don't like the
Hater.
jerseys
don't
and you
like
like
the
the.
Hater.
I never liked the black when
It's
they
fair.
introduced it years
So
ago.
the problem with the black is we associate it with bad times. I actually liked.
I just don't like the black. I
fair.
don't like
It's
the
fair.
black. You know what it reminds me of? Panthers.
A lot of people have
Might
said
be a
that.
Carolina Panther.
A lot of people
I
said
don't-
that.
I don't care for it.
That is ugly.
Real quick on the white, I'm shocked you like it, but
No, I like the white because it says Detroit. across the
I
top,
love that.
and
I thought
that's
that
in
was
the
a
white
nice touch.
jersey, and I like that.
I thought
Nothing
that
will
was a
beat the
nice
alt-white.
touch. Was the Detroit?
Correct.
Because every team, like even old Lions jerseys, they say Lions at some point. You know, the ones in the early 2000s said that. The Joey Harrington ones, it said Lions under the NFL crest. So I like that they
Correct.
used
It
that
was
to do
very
Detroit.
small, but it had it on.
I love that they use that space to do Detroit because when we go in to kick your ass on the road, you're gonna know where we came from. That's what I like about it.
I don't care for the black. I don't care for it.
Is your beef with the blue only the striping on the sleeves?
I like the shade of blue they went with.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't like the striping. I don't like the striping at all.
I love
It
the
doesn't
white
say
numbers.
football to me.
Yeah.
If you were going to mimic that jersey, which they tried to do, they should have kept the stripes the way they were. The original stripes.
It would just be a throwback jersey at that point, though.
It's not a throwback jersey, though.
If you do
because
that, it would be.
At the numbers on the side, they don't have numbers on the side of these jerseys. So it's not really a throwback. It's a glimpse of that.
It's a modernized
It's
version.
a modernized version of it. I don't care for the striping. I don't like the striping on the helmet. I like the blue face mask because that's going back to that time.
Blue face man.
I
And,
think
So sick.
you know,
for me personally, the white numbers versus the gray, the white names and numbers versus the gray,
Yeah, pop.
that just looks so good off that blue, 100%.
And
it's
that
a-
was one of the beefs, by the
Yeah.
way, was the journalists in particular, like people in the press box, couldn't see the numbers because number one, the numbers weren't defined. Look at the Hutchinson
that's because
jersey.
the gray blends in with that Honda.
Yeah.
blue.
The gray, of course, is a problem.
Right.
The lettering wasn't good. Now it's a little more spaced out and more bold. And on top of that, the numbers aren't as defined. You know, that from afar, that could look like 87. People have been clamoring for the white numbers. That was the only thing I really went into it looking for because out of all the jersey concepts we've seen for the last 3 or 4 years that artists have been rendering, that's what I wanted. I wanted the white jersey with the silver piping around the numbers, and the blue jersey with the white numbers and the silver piping around the numbers, and they did that. They gave it to us. That was like I would have been good after that with the home jersey. I love the road jersey. I think it's outstanding. I think it's
that's
clean.
the best jersey out of all.
Fair. I love the combinations, what they've done with the pants. There's now emphasis on blue pants, silver pants. There's white pants. There's black pants now. And I actually I'm not as obsessed with the black jersey, but the black getup and the new helmet. The new helmet didn't leak, which I mentioned in the article.
Oh.
The new helmet didn't leak. So it was the only true surprise we got on Thursday
new
night.
helmet's
And
incredible.
damn.
My God.
Damn.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
The black Lions logo off that blue pops so nicely. To me, that was the high point, 1,000%. 1,000%. The new helmet was the high point. And you're right. It's really the only thing we didn't see ahead of time. So I thought that was awesome. Some housekeeping here. I was told I need to explain things better this season. So there is a big fan of the show who we believe is from the San Francisco Bay Area. He is a repeat offender here on Tip Balls. Coming back from season 2, the biggest fan of the show, Dark Lumen, is officially in the chat, as is another huge fan of the show that we need to shout out, Dark Cumin is back in the chat. So shout out to the Lumen X Cumin combination. They are back for a whole another season, and we're just so glad to have them here.
Whatever, he sucks.
And President Baker, by the way.
Yes, shout out to Leon. Again, we need to explain things better.
Did you send him the link, or did it get to Instagram?
Leon was in the chat before we even had the
You
link.
got here.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Shout out to Leon. For the record, Leon, good old friend of mine and Uncle Sam's, going way back 10 years now, back to his days at the fruit market.
Teenager.
Yeah.
I met him. He was a retarded teenager.
Yeah. So shout out to President Baker in the chat. Now, are you guys ready to talk about the draft?
Please.
I never stopped talking about the draft.
Well, now we get to do it live for the people. Couple things first. One, and this is more of a Zolo question, I think. Do you think it will be executed properly?
Yes.
Is it going to be as big of a cluster as everybody's saying?
Yes, because of road closures and location. Yes, it's going to be. It's going to be a big cluster. If you're not prepared logistically, it's going to be a disaster. If you don't have a premeditated parking spot, if you're not taking a car down the day before, if you're not planning to do some walking, you're going to be in for a time because they're anticipating more people in the city for this. Probably the most people in the city for something since the Final Four in 2009. And really, in terms of scale, it's going to be closer to the Super Bowl, which was 2006. It's going to be a little bit closer to that because people are coming from more backgrounds, if you will. So I think it's going to be really tricky to navigate downtown this weekend. Really tricky. If you don't know what you're doing, just Uber.
If you don't plan ahead, you're done.
Yeah, it's funny because I remember when I went to the Super Bowl, and that was almost 20 years ago now, downtown, and navigating through that was a complete nightmare. Even as a kid, I remember just taking hours to get downtown.
On Super Sunday,
Oh, it was a
how long
mess.
did it take you to get into the
It
stadium?
was 2.5 hours.
It was 2
From
hours
park
in the cold.
Yes.
In the cold.
Freezing, snow, rain, bullshit.
In the cold.
Yes.
It was horrible. Like occasionally there'd be a tent, like there were
you got a
tent
heated
checkpoints
tent. Yes.
occasionally, and then you
Yep.
have to get to the next security.
Correct.
It was I went early to the Super Bowl. I was a kid, of course. I was in 8th grade. But it was so cold that we were sprinting once you got past that last line of
just
fencing to get in.
warmth.
It was terrible.
And you had that big snowstorm here.
Yeah, it was a huge snowstorm. And
the buses almost didn't make it to the. Who was it? The Niners almost didn't make it to the
stadium.
so not
Silverdome.
to mention that's an asset we have going for us this time around as the weather is improved. I mean, it's not going to be great here this week, but it's still going to be in the 60s, I think, on Thursday. And it's still going to be nice enough to, if you're dressed up properly, it's going to be nicer to walk around downtown this week than it has been, over the last 2 months. And I think that's what's going to make the draft great is you're going to get to see downtown in a lot different light, and it should be a lot of fun. I don't think it's going to be perfect, and I think elements of it are going to be boring. A lot of people are going to be rushing down there and not taking advantage of the fan experiences properly. But if you're just going to hear the picks and you're going to take it in and to do some people watching, it should be a really good event for that. It should be good for you to take it in and see the NFL. Like, this is one of 2 stages that the NFL has that travels. It's this and the Super Bowl. So it might never come back here. It might never be back here in our lifetime, hypothetically. But we got it. We got one of the first one of the first 7 or 8 traveling drafts. We have it, and it's exciting, and it should be a good time.
So there's been a lot of debate, not really on what's going to happen with pick number 1, but more so what's going to happen after number 1. It seems like the consensus number 1 overall pick, which, I mean, it's a 99.9% situation, that Caleb Williams is going to go number 1 overall and go to Chicago. Now, I know over the last couple of weeks, there was just little tiny spurts of people saying, oh, well, Chicago's going to draft him and then immediately trade him to Washington. He is a Washington guy. It's his hometown. Washington has an opening at quarterback. Do either of you think there is any scenario where Chicago drafts him and then immediately trades him to Washington and or pick swaps with Washington to let Washington have Caleb Williams?
No.
0.
No.
Why?
Because I don't think they would have got rid of Justin Fields and all that mess if they were going to do that.
Well, I mean, there's other quarterbacks. So you don't think there's...
Like I said, I don't think they would have bailed on Justin Fields if they knew they were going to fucking trade the pick.
Zolo?
That makes no sense.
Yeah, it wouldn't make sense to do it. And I know a lot of people feel a lot of ways about Caleb Williams, whether it's he paints his nails or he's got bad attitude problems or whatever. He said all the right things during this draft process. And Chicago did something really neat that I read early this morning. As opposed to when they had team meetings in town, they know him well enough. Even though they didn't get the best glimpse of him at the combine and he didn't do the medical checks, and he only did medical checks with them in person, they know him well enough. So what they did when he was in town for his top 30 visit, and it's the only one he took, what they did was they sent him out with team leaders and guys who are important on the team. They sent him out with Cole Kmet. They sent him out with some other guys. He's obviously met with some of the guys that are going to be catching passes with him. DJ Moore, I think, was at the meeting too, or at the dinner. And it's to me, it's a no-brainer. The only way Caleb Williams fails is if the Bears fail Caleb Williams. And I think that would hold true with most number one picks in most teams. The only way Caleb
They
Williams
brought
fails,
in a lot of guys to help.
I was
him.
just going to say that. Ryan
Keenan
Poles,
Allen.
Ryan
got one of
Poles
the
has
best
played it
receivers
perfect.
in the NFL.
And they're going to draft
this
a
guy would be
receiver.
throwing to.
And they're going to draft a receiver too. I think the Bears nailed their offseason. They did so much to protect Caleb Williams that I think they're doing everything right, and it's a no-brainer to take him.
Real quick, we have to jump to the chat for a second here. Both the Lumens and the Cumans are asking what you're drinking. Would you like to give a shout out to what you're drinking?
What am I drinking?
What are you drinking?
Aladdin.
What is it?
Aladdin. Alani.
I think this is the first time I've ever heard him say Alani before.
That's the first time he has ever said Alani.
Drinking Aladdin.
What flavor?
I don't know. Said blueberry, raspberry, something like that.
I think it's breezeberry, but either way. No, Cuman was wrong. Cuman said in the chat that it was the Cosmic. It's actually not Cosmic Stardust. It's breezeberry, but he did get the brand right. So, Alani News sponsor us, Aladdin. Okay. Getting away from pick 1-1, because I think everybody agrees it's going to be Caleb Williams, and yes, he is going to stay in Chicago. We go to pick number 2. This right now is kind of up in the air a little bit more than I think anybody thought it was 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, it was pretty definitive that it looked like LSU quarterback Jaden Daniels was going to go in this spot. Zolo, in his mock draft, which will be published on tipballs.com later on, had him going to Washington in the 2 spot. J.J. McCarthy's odds for going number 2 overall have jumped substantially, as has Drake May. Jaden Daniels hasn't really changed, but Vegas thinks that there may be something to J.J. McCarthy going number 2. I want thoughts from both of you.
I don't think he should.
You're talking about Jaden Daniels or J.J. McCarthy?
McCarthy.
We're not saying should.
I think if they're going to take a guy and really, if they want the prototypical guy, you take Drake May.
So you think Drake May?
I didn't see a lot of tape on Drake May. I've seen him play a little bit, and what I've seen out of him didn't really stand out to me. I think you could get that out of just about any of these top 5 guys.
So we're going off of Daniel Jeremiah's mock draft here as well.
Right.
Daniel Jeremiah has them taking Marvin Harrison at 2 in his latest mock draft.
Yeah, I keep hearing that too.
I can't imagine they're going to roll the dice with Marcus Mariota this year.
Well, here's the thing. I think that they think they can take the top player on the board and then come back around later and grab the guy they want.
They got a lot of draft capital.
Correct.
And they could move up in a hypothetical where
A lot like Houston did last year.
They could do that. It's tough with
you could
thirds.
see them do that.
It's tough with second and thirds, but I know they have 2 picks. They have 36 and 40, if I remember correctly. At a minimum, a team like the Lions is a great example. They can pair 36 and 40 if we're operating under the assumption that one of Bo Nix or Michael Penix is going to be there in the back half of the first round. And there's teams like Washington that could come up, and if they like one of them well enough, they could do it. If I'm the Commanders, J.J. McCarthy, tricky. I'm not taking J.J. McCarthy over Jaden Daniels.
I just made a mistake. That was his. I was looking at the wrong list. That was prospect rating. Daniel Jeremiah has Drake May going to Washington.
How recent is that?
The 19th.
Something 19.
So this weekend. So there's backstory on that. Jaden Daniels' camp has soured on the Commanders. They didn't like how his top 30 meeting went, because what they did is they took a bunch of prospects and they sent him to Topgolf. So he didn't get one-on-one time with the Commanders like he wanted. And I think he didn't like how they handled the draft process. That being said, I think the bridges can be mended. I don't think it's a problem. I'm taking Jaden Daniels too, because I believe that after Caleb Williams, he's the most well-rounded. And there's going to be boom or bust potential. You're going to have to live with him making certain mistakes.
He's a lot like Anthony Richardson from last year.
Yeah, more mobile than Anthony
Except
Richardson.
he's not. Yeah, but he's not as big as Richardson either.
Of course.
Yeah, he's 6'4" and 210. He's a little small, a little skinny.
I firmly believe Jaden Daniels is the second best quarterback prospect, and I think the Commanders at the time I did this, Drake May was still heavily being mocked. I did this 2 weeks ago. At the time I did it, Drake May was still heavily being mocked to the Commanders. I think it's it should be Jaden Daniels. I think he's the better player. I think he offers more upside. I think he's the sexier pick. And to answer your question, what you don't know about Drake May, between the numbers, he's the best quarterback in this draft. When it comes to throws between the numbers, a lot of other things you can teach to quarterbacks.
You know what he reminds me of, and I can't get it out of my head? Trubisky. Maybe because they played at the same school. Or,
a lot of people are saying that.
Maybe that's it. I don't know.
A lot of people
I can't get it out of my head.
So speaking of, I mean, there's two guys that are consensus 2-3 right now. It seems like Daniel Jeremiah, obviously Drake May at 2. He has Jaden Daniels going to New England at 3. Zolo has Jaden Daniels going 2 to Washington, and then Drake May going to New England at 3.
I see. I agree with that.
So, shockingly enough, both Zolo, who made his mock draft 2 weeks ago, and Daniel Jeremiah have the exact same thing happening at 4, where that is Minnesota trading with Arizona up into 4 and drafting Michigan quarterback J.J. McCarthy at 4. So Kirk Cousins' replacement in Minnesota, J.J. McCarthy, and off the rip, he gets some great wide receivers to throw the ball to. I want to know what your thought process there. You think that Arizona passes up on Marvin Harrison to accumulate more picks?
Yes. I think that they have one of the most active GMs in the league.
Not only that, they can get a receiver later. This is receiver heavy, this draft. So I don't think, if you're going to get Napers overhand, it is what it is, dude.
I think
you're still getting a top guy.
One of Neighbors or Odunze, if they get back to 11, one of those two guys is going to be there at 11.
Right.
And I think they're going to live with that and be okay with it, especially if it brings them more draft capital. At some point around noon today, both Diana Rossini from The Athletic and Adam Schefter tweeted out at the same time that Cardinals GM Monty Ozenfort is willing to be active. But he waits till the last possible moment so he can capitalize and maximize the value of the picks. And someone from the Cardinals organization is feeding that. If two writers are saying that at the same time,
Correct.
Someone's feeding that to know, hey, we're open for business. They want to tell you that they're open for business. So I don't know if the Cardinals are necessarily going to be the ones that trade there, but someone is going to jump up for J.J. McCarthy because I think people think that he's not going to make it past 6 to the Giants. People think the Giants are going to actually invest.
I've been hearing some weird shit that New England is trying to shop their pick.
Yeah,
that started.
That I've been
quite
hearing
a bit today.
Yes.
The only thing, if you're going to shop 3, and you're going to roll the dice,
It's somebody that
Jacoby
needs a
Brissett.
quarterback. It's somebody that's Minnesota.
You better be getting a haul back for that.
There's too many quarterbacks in this draft, and there's too many quarterback needy teams in that top 10 that they shouldn't overthink this. It's on you if you can develop the quarterback. That's on you. But you have some really good prospects, and you should take one of these really good prospects. You shouldn't overthink it if you want to compete this year. Now, if the Patriots don't want to compete this year, trade your pick, get your draft capital, run it with Jacoby Brissett or whoever for the next year, and then you go at it again next year.
Zappy.
You go get Shador Sanders or Quinn Ewers next year.
So with the 5th pick, you have the Chargers then taking Marvin Harrison.
And they could also be a major play to trade because Jim Harbaugh could easily sit there and leverage and say, come draft my boy. I'll give you come draft this kid. He's one of the best prospects I've ever seen. So why don't you trade with me? We'll take more picks. I got Justin Herbert. I can rebuild after all the assets that I lost this offseason. And that's another good spot I think the Chargers could easily trade. If they pick there, you got to replace your 2 wide receivers that you moved on from. That's my opinion. I think you have to replace those guys. He could think trenches.
They do have guys there that are still capable of moving the ball down the field.
But none of them.
Williams was hurt the last couple of years, inconsistent.
You still got to replace him though, and even if not, Keenan Allen was coming off one of his best years, and that's gone now. So you gotta do some thinking there.
Daniel Jeremiah has the Jets trading with the Chargers and moving up to 5 to take Marvin Harrison. So pretty much the consensus thus far is you're going to have 4 quarterbacks and Marvin Harrison is your top 5. In which order they go, in which ones they are exactly, is kind of a question mark. But can you all agree that you're going to see 4 quarterbacks and Marvin Harrison go with the top 5?
At least 3 quarterbacks and Marvin
think,
Harrison.
I
least
think you could possibly see an O-lineman go.
It would be Joe Alt to the Chargers.
So
I agree with that.
Yeah.
if we move on to 6, that's the Giants. Daniel Jeremiah has them taking Malik Neighbors, wide receiver. Zolo has them taking Joe Alt, tackle from Notre Dame. Thoughts on both of them? Because I could see both of them happening. The Giants are a team that have so many needs right now that
Correct.
I could see both of those picks happening. Is there any truth to the rumors I'm hearing is that they're going to try and trade Daniel Jones and they would be in play for a quarterback at 6?
It's a lot of the narrative, the discourse from the national writers. So Peter Schrager's a great example. A lot of the discourse on the national writers, it comes from the fact that the Giants love J.J. McCarthy. I don't know what it is. I don't know what's going on, but
Brian Daboll's last hurrah right here.
Yeah,
Shit.
but it's not their GM. It's not Joe Schoen or whatever his name is.
Yeah.
Last hurrah. He's probably not getting fired, and he's the one. I don't know. Did he draft Daniel Jones? No, he inherited Daniel Jones.
No, he
so
inherited.
I guess it makes sense from that front.
No, they weren't getting along too good toward the end of the year last year, so
Yeah.
there was a lot of dysfunction going on down the stretch there, if you remember.
No, it seems like that both New York organizations are in disarray, and I think they both have great coaches
Well, I actually
too.
think the Jets are getting their shit together a little better.
They have a big year.
You want to know something? I actually wanted to touch on that because I was thinking about this earlier. Which 2 teams have the most pressure to get this draft right? In my opinion,
I think it's the Giants.
and I was going to disagree with you. In my opinion, if the Jets don't get this draft right and they don't do something sexy, you're at a point where if the Jets are not winning the division or at least within a game of winning the division in a wild card spot, everybody there is losing their job after this year. There's no question in my mind. Amu Bob will be back at Fordson. All right. They are going to clear house. So
Mahmoud Bob.
that's why the Jets trading up to take Marvin Harrison if he's there at 5, it makes sense to me.
I'm going to be honest with
now.
you. If I were them, I'd stay at 10 and take the best old lineman there.
The Giants.
That's what I would do.
The Giants, I don't think there's as much pressure, but there is still pressure there. And I like the Malik Neighbors pick to the Giants. I really do. The Giants were so receiver depleted last year. They were everything depleted. But I mean, my God, who were the
Jimmy
1 and 2
Cutlets.
receivers?
Yeah, fucking Jimmy Cutlets.
Tommy Cutlets.
Whatever.
Danny DeVito.
Danny DeVito.
Who were the receivers for the Giants last year?
What's that?
Who were the receivers for the Giants last year?
Is Darius
Wandale
Slayton still there?
Robinson.
Darius Slayton was there. Wendell Robinson.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a joke. So if you can get a guy like Neighbors there, I think it's awesome. And who was the offensive
They had
lineman?
Jalen Hyatt too. They just didn't.
They didn't.
utilize him
Yeah,
properly.
they just decided not to do anything with him. Who was the
He
offensive
actually had a
lineman?
good stretch toward the end of
At
last
the end,
year. He was
did.
real nice.
He did.
Who was the offensive lineman they took last year?
Oof.
He was hurt. Cam or the guy from
Wait, I don't think they drafted an offense.
No,
They,
Was it the year before?
it was the year before. Yeah, I know you're.
He got
talking
hurt.
about.
Hold on, I'm gonna try and pull it up real quick.
While you're doing that, I have them in my mock at 6, staying at 6 and taking Joe Alt, and that's them. That's if they're lucky and Harbaugh and the Chargers don't take Joe Alt. I have them taking Joe Alt because the thing that stood out to me last year is the reason why they blew through 3 quarterbacks is because their offensive line was getting pummeled.
fucking horrible.
And you build from the trenches out.
Right.
I know
And
a lot
think
of
that's
jobs
what
are in trouble.
Harbaugh's going to do.
Yeah, but I think the Giants could do that as well. I think the Giants could easily do that as well, and they'll be really fortunate if Joe Alt is there. I would run if I were them to take Joe Alt over. You've already invested in Daniel Jones, and it's a disaster to move on from him. I wouldn't think quarterback. I wouldn't be thinking J.J. McCarthy like everyone says. You can do that next year. This is your last year, and get it right with Daniel Jones.
I just don't think it's going to be 4 quarterbacks gone in the first fucking 5 picks.
I do.
I don't. I just don't think that.
The name I was thinking of was Evan Neal,
Yeah.
and he has been such a, especially within the New York media, monumental disappointment.
Well, he got hurt. I mean, what are you going to do?
At the end of the
Injuries
day,
happen.
it's hard for me to think that they're going to go with another. They again,
I
Giants are a
liked what
team
the
that has to do
Giants
something
did. They
sexy.
went Evan Neal and then they Thibodeau. You go offensive and defensive line. You need to go offensive line again. Whoever they got, they're going to put back there at quarterback is going to get fucking annihilated. So they better bolster that line. They better use half their draft on their offensive line.
You got to see what you have in Daniel Jones, and you get him help. That's how you.
Daniel Jones, he was running around like a maniac. The guy, he was. Was there anybody sacked more than Daniel Jones? No.
Did you see that video of him from his presser to talk about when he was coming back?
He looked very defeated in the season.
I mean, he looked
Sam Howell
fucked
lead
up.
the league in sacks.
Sam Howell might have been sacked more than Daniel Jones, but it was close.
Daniel Jones was hurt. That's the
Yeah.
only reason why he didn't get sacked more.
At 7, the Tennessee Titans. Zolo has them going offensive line. Daniel Jeremiah has them taking Joe Alt, but Zolo has Joe Alt off the board already. So he has the Titans taking, you're going to have to forgive me on this one.
Olu Fashanu.
There we go. Olu Fashanu, offensive tackle out of Penn State.
He's nice.
Thoughts?
He's really nice.
He's a little raw. Out of all the tackle prospects, he probably has the most lackluster. I don't want to say tape because his tape's good. And in practice, this guy went up against some bastards. He went up against Chop Robinson in practice. He went up against some of the best defensive linemen in the Big Ten, all for 2 years. So he's a great player. And again, I'm looking back at these Titan games and playing them over in my head, and I'm just looking at, you lost Tannehill, he died. And Will Levis got crushed at the end of the year. And one of the things to mitigate Will Levis running all over the place is you get him some help. They got him help at receiver. They brought in what's our friend's name from Atlanta and Jacksonville? Sorry, it's been a while. It's been a few
Calvin
weeks.
Ridley.
They signed Calvin Ridley in free agency. They got DeAndre Hopkins, and I think this would be a nice way to round out their offensive line.
They got to bolster that line. They have to.
It's similar scenario with the Giants. You guys see what you got at quarterback. The best way to see what you got at quarterback is to get him help and go get your help. So if Joe Alt's there, 100% they're going to take him. If not, I think they should still go tackle.
I think Will Levis is not bad.
I agree.
He's not as bad as everybody perceived him as being a bust. I didn't see that out of him last year.
He was very green. He was very green, and I love when he was. There were games where he was light. The one game he had 4 touchdown passes.
He was,
and they made him against Jacksonville.
The ball jumps off his hands.
Yeah,
I like when he's playing.
I love what I saw out of him, and I'm excited to see more. And a tackle makes me even more excited.
So, much to Uncle Sam's dismay, a defensive player has not come off the board through the first 7 picks. But both Zolo and Daniel Jeremiah agree that at 8, the new and improved Atlanta Falcons, who, for the record, I believe, are going to win their division and 12 games this year. Atlanta is back. The Atlanta Falcons take Alabama edge rusher Dallas Turner.
Best edge rusher in the draft, first defensive player off the board. Makes a lot of sense. I think they met with him at the Combine. They had a top 30 visit with him. I'm sure they got a great look at him being at Alabama. There's a lot to like. Dallas Turner's very good. He's a very good football player, high motor.
Anybody who plays for Nick Saban's a good football player.
Agreed.
Basically.
Agreed.
Zolo and Daniel Jeremiah agree again at 9, the Chicago Bears' second pick.
I made this 2 weeks ago, by the way. I made my mock 2 weeks ago. There's already things that I would change, but Daniel Jeremiah made his 3 days ago, so he copied me.
Amen. Roma Dunze, wide receiver, Washington at 9 to the Bears. Essentially stacking wide receiver for the Bears, giving Caleb Williams every opportunity to succeed, and with a lot of question marks around how Keenan Allen's health is going to be, I don't mind this pick whatsoever.
So less about that and more that Keenan Allen's a free agent, and he's probably not going to be back there next year. This was just a stopgap to make sure that Caleb Williams succeeds, so he's already going to need a replacement.
And
unless they go Brock Bowers.
I think that's too high for Brock.
In the seam.
Cole Kmet.
And him.
And then didn't they sign a tight end too? Correct me if I'm wrong. They brought someone else in as well.
Did.
I can't remember who it is. Oh, it might have been that might have been a Charger too. It might have been what's his face from the Chargers.
Gerald Everett.
Yeah. So
Gerald Everett
exactly.
too.
So they
all right. So they got the 2 tight ends.
Yeah.
What's to say they don't go whole line here?
They could. They could.
to really help this kid out.
Sexy.
Who's that kid from Barton? The center?
It would be a tackle. I think
it's
I think it
tackle?
would be a tackle.
Because they went tackle last year.
And they could, but I think you lose value on tackle, whereas some people have Malik Neighbors better as a top 3 player in the draft, and some people have him better than Marvin Harrison. I know the Bears have done extensive homework on Odunze, and he was a monster last year.
Yeah, he's
If they end up
for a
with
few
either
years.
one of those guys, Odunze or Neighbors, that's a good get for Chicago.
At 10, Daniel Jeremiah has the Chargers picking here because the Jets traded up to their spot. And Zolo, you have the Jets taking Brock Bowers at 10, tight end from Georgia. Obviously, Daniel Jeremiah has the Chargers taking, again, I'm going to butcher the hell out of this.
Olufashanu?
No,
Tell me the position. I'll tell you who it is.
offensive tackle,
From what school?
Oregon State.
Talise Fuaga.
There we go. So me personally,
Fuego.
I actually wrote an article on this the other day. It's on sportsology.com. If you go to Footballology, you will see it there. I have the Jets taking him there. So I think that's a good spot for him regardless.
I think the Jets are going O-line. I don't think they're going receiver. They signed Mike Williams. You got Garrett Wilson. You have weapons there. Aaron Rodgers has plenty of weapons at his disposal. You got to protect this guy. You got to.
We've never seen a hybrid pass-catching, blocking tight end like Brock Bowers. He does all of the elite blocking. He did it from day one as a freshman at Georgia. He won a national championship as a freshman and as a sophomore, and he was the most essential pass catcher on the team both of those years.
Hurt.
Last year was a little banged up. He still had a monster year.
Still had a good year.
He still was incredible.
Yeah.
And I think, especially if you're Aaron Rodgers, if he has any input, which I'm guessing he gets a little bit of input on this, he's never had a tight end like Brock Bowers, mainly because there hasn't been a tight end like Brock Bowers. This is what the Lions were
I don't
getting
agree
sold.
with that. I think Sam Laporta is just like Brock Bowers.
Sam Laporta is better than Brock Bowers, but in terms of a prospect,
I agree.
at this stage, there's never been anything better than Brock Bowers, and I think this is, out of all the 10 picks, this is probably one of the best fits that I could see. Is the marriage between Brock Bowers and the Jets, and I think they run to the podium to make that pick if he's there. That's just my 2 cents, because it solves a lot. It solves your blocking. It solves, you had the mock. You had a receiver mock there when you were doing your article, right? Didn't you say they were going to take?
No, I had name.
Talise Fuaga.
Yes.
Okay. A lot of people have them taking Neighbors or Odunze as well.
I said that there's a chance if Neighbors drops there, because I didn't think Odunze would, that they would take Neighbors. But I was more set on the offensive tackle. 11. Daniel Jeremiah, that was involved in another trade. He has Arizona taking Jared Verse at 11. You have Arizona. You have Neighbors dropping to Arizona at 11. Again, this was a couple weeks ago. I think Neighbors has picked up a little bit more steam, but hypothetically, if this happens here, you have the steal of the draft, and you have them trading back. So is it safe to say that if Arizona is picking at 4, they're going to take Marvin Harrison? If they trade back to 10 or 11, they're going to take whoever's left between Neighbors and Odunze.
I think at some point in the first round, and they could end up with 3 picks if they make that trade that with the Vikings that yields them 2, because they also have pick 27 as well. So there's a chance if they make that trade, they'd have 11, 23, 27. I think at some point in the first round, the Cardinals are going to end up with a receiver, whether they trade back into it or whatever. I think the Cardinals are going to end up with a pass catcher, because I know you agree with me. I love what I saw from the Cardinals last year. I think Rondale Moore could come around.
Think, at this point, what makes sense to you? Your quarterback was hurt, missed half the season last year.
Mm-hmm.
You got to go best O-line. You got to.
They drafted one last year at 3, though. Wherever they picked, they drafted one line.
Paris Johnson.
Paris Johnson from Ohio State.
You can't go wrong if you bolster that line.
Listen.
They have more picks to do that later.
That is
and
true.
if Odunze or Neighbors are there,
yeah,
I think they look towards that, because they can get the lineman at 23 or 27. Someone will be there.
We have to discuss this real quick, because if you go to the Cardinals wide receiver room,
Rondale Moore.
No. Michael Wilson, Greg Dortch, Chris Moore, Zach Pascal, Andre Bacchialia, Jeff Smith. I mean, I've never...
What's wrong with that room?
Outside of Greg Dortch, I don't know who... And Zach Pascal,
There's
I don't think I've ever heard of him.
There's someone you omitted, which is Trey McBride, who had a monster.
Okay,
He could
agreed.
come in as one of
He
the
was
5 best tight ends in
absolutely
football
lights out
next year.
Last year.
Exactly. And they're really high on Greg Dortch, who also
Yes.
looked really good in the latter half of the season. Rondale Moore's
Especially
Rondale
when-
Moore's gone.
Okay, so who
Yeah.
start from the top again? Go from the top, just the top of the depth
Michael
chart.
Wilson.
Michael Wilson. Okay, who's also he
Big
was a rookie last
receiver,
year as well, right?
Big
Michael
receiver
Wilson?
had a big,
Believe so.
big second half
I
last
think he was out of Louisville. I can't remember. which
Yes. Third-round pick out of Stanford.
He had a
Stanford.
huge second half last year.
I think if you add one of these top end receivers in this draft, especially if it's Odunze or Neighbors, if you add him to the other guys, I think that's a pretty formidable receiving core, and that's probably the best receiving core that he's ever had a chance to throw to. That's just my 2 cents.
Rondale Moore is an Atlanta Falcon now.
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
That's spicy.
Kirk Cousins.
There we go. Kirk Cousins. Atlanta, 12-13 win team. Next up, Denver picking at 12. Daniel Jeremiah has them taking Brock Bowers. Obviously, in our mock, he's off the board.
Oh, he's gone.
So we have Denver taking Bo Nix, quarterback, Oregon.
And I noted in mine that is totally a reach. Bo Nix at 12.
Is it really, though? It's best quarterback available.
So that's the thing is I think they need a quarterback. And
They need a quarterback.
And trading for Zach Wilson today doesn't answer that. I think they truly need a quarterback. I think they should go get their quarterback. Personally, I like Michael Penix more than Bo Nix, but through the draft process, it seems like Denver is obsessed with Bo Nix. They brought him in. He reminds Sean Payton a little bit of a one Drew Brees. And Bo Nix is a winner. He's a good quarterback. It's just a matter of, from Denver's perspective, or anyone who still needs a quarterback at this point and can wait to get him, it's a matter of, do you want to wait to get the quarterback? Do you want to trade back into the later half of the first round? I don't know. I think it would be prudent for them to take a quarterback here.
Broncos QB depth chart as of today, after all trades were finalized. Jarrett Stidham is number 1. Zach Wilson is number 2. And Ben DiNucci is number 3.
I think DiNucci should be number 2.
How do you feel about Bo Nix going here? It's well noted how you feel about the Bo
Jeremiah
Nix
had
versus-
Brock Bowers, you said?
Yes.
You know that I feel Penix is better than he is, but
They just
it
haven't
is-
talked to Penix, though. That's
nobody's
why.
talked to Penix, and I can see Penix a little later in this first round. In this first round, he'll be gone.
Speaking of Michael Penix, Jeremiah has him going 13 to the Raiders.
To the Raiders.
Another great. That'd be as good of a fit as Brock Bowers to the Jets would be Penix to the Raiders.
What better spot for him than the Raiders?
It'd be a great spot for Michael Penix.
It seems like a match made in heaven.
Yeah.
I would be shocked if the problem is the only impractical thing about this all, because it all sounds great, but is there any world where you have 6 quarterbacks go in the top 13 picks?
No, but 4 is going to happen. So get used to hearing
Possibly.
4.
Possibly.
I think
I
that
still
would
think
have
some
to
of
be a
these teams are
record.
going to wait to the back end and then move back in.
But if you want May, Daniels, McCarthy, you got to
Listen,
go to the
you
top.
can get back. You don't have to give up that first big pick. You can, like you said, utilize your second and third round picks. Some of these teams have fucking 3 picks in the top 100, 4 picks in the top 100. They could move back up and grab these guys before the end of the first round. This is where holding them spots at 31, 30, 29 are huge, because these guys will want to come back up to grab their quarterback. And this is where these other picks become valuable because of that 5th-year option.
So you have the first defensive back coming off the board here to the Raiders. Terrion Arnold, cornerback, Alabama. Thoughts on why he should be the first DB off the board?
A couple reasons. He had the best season last year out of the 3. Let's say between him and Quinyon Mitchell. What Terrion Arnold and Kool-Aid McKinstry were asked to do at Alabama was you need to go out and cover the SEC's best, and they did that. That was one of the best DB rooms Saban ever had last year. And then if we go back 2 years, Brian Branch is in that room as well. I just think Terrion Arnold's all-around tape stands out. Who he covers stands out to me. He has to cover he had to cover Malik Neighbors. He had to cover Brian Thomas from LSU. He had to cover these guys. He had to cover Mitchell and Worthy from Texas earlier this year. And I just love what I saw from Terrion Arnold. He checks off all the boxes for the prototypical corner, which is height, speed, ball skills, instincts. He's there. He checks off all the boxes.
So, with that being said, now that Jimmy Garoppolo is a Los Angeles Ram, that puts Aiden O'Connell number 1 on the depth chart. And you think the Raiders roll the dice with Aiden O'Connell for a year?
You'll see what I think the Raiders are going to end up doing later in the draft. I put it in there just for him.
At 14, Daniel Jeremiah has the Saints taking offensive tackle from Penn State.
Olufashanu.
Oh, yeah.
And he had Fuaga going earlier, right? He had Fuaga going.
He had him going to
the Jets, maybe?
The Chargers with the Jets pick. You have them taking Fuagua.
Yeah, I have Talise Fuaga here. I think they need a tackle. Same drill. I think they're going to usher in. We're going to prep for bringing a quarterback in the next year or two once we run it. It's the shit or get off the pot year for Derek Carr. That's it. Plain and simple. And they're gonna sink assets into seeing what they have in Derek Carr.
Especially Winston gone, right?
Yeah. Where did Winston go? Chicago? No. Cincinnati. Jameis Winston went to Cincinnati. Or Cleveland. He went to Cleveland. Excuse me.
Cleveland.
Yeah, I think this is just a play to help out that offense that we went on that doesn't have an identity. This is a good asset. There's no such thing as too many offensive linemen. So this is an asset. You put him with Ramczyk and you see how they roll from there.
Yeah, I mean, they do have Taysom Hill. Don't forget about Taysom Hill. He can come in, take care of business.
Anyway.
Next up, the Indianapolis Colts at 15. Zolo has them taking, is it Keaton or Quinton?
I think it's Quinyon.
Quinyon Mitchell, cornerback out of Toledo, and Daniel Jeremiah agrees with you. This kind of seems like a consensus.
He was the top rated as of this week. This guy's like the top rated corner.
It's between him and Arnold. Personally, if I'm the Lions, when we're talking about, because I don't know if they're going to stay at 29. I think they're either going to move up if someone starts falling that they're liking, or I think if they don't like how the board is, they're going to trade out of 29. I don't think they're picking at 29.
I think that too.
And I think this is the names that one of the names you need to keep an eye on for the Lions at 29. If they're going to move up as Quinyon Mitchell, they got a great look at him this year because he was at Toledo. I know they talked to him at the combine.
Yeah.
They brought him in for a top 30 visit, and that, like, if you know, most of their picks last year, in fact, all their picks in the first 3 rounds last year were guys that they talked to at the combine, because you don't talk to every guy, but you do talk to as many as you want, and they were also guys that came here on
Well, you
visits.
have 30 selections.
You get 30 visits. Well, no, the 30's them coming here. At the combine, you could talk to as many you have time for. And this guy, Quinyon Mitchell, checks off certain boxes for the Lions, and it's no secret that they've done homework on DBs. Now, that being said, there are also a lot of teams that need DBs. The Colts are one of them. And I think a stout DB1 is something that can complete the Colts defense. And he reminds me a lot of Sauce Gardner. I think he's a guy that could come in with swagger and character, and he's got a lot of, chip on your shoulder because you played at a non-Power 5 school. He had a monster Senior Bowl. He was at the Senior Bowl, which is where he stood out. He had a monster Senior Bowl, and all his measurables restacked up again at the Combine. So this would be a hell of a coup for the Colts to get, in my opinion, the best DB in the draft at 15.
So throwing it back to that real quick, I saw multiple stories today about the Lions actually trading up to 15 here and giving up 29 and 61 to move up to 15 and then getting a later pick back from the Colts. If you're the Lions, do you give up 61 to move up to that spot and take him?
61 is tricky because other than last year, I don't think the Lions have had, even in the Brad Holmes era, the curse of the second round has persisted. Last year, different story. You got Sam Laporta and Brian Branch, which worked out perfect. But they've missed on second rounders still, in my opinion. They took Levi Onwuzurike the first year. Who'd they take in year 2? Josh Paschal, but it's year 3 for Josh Paschal, and year 3 players tend to do well in Detroit. So it just depends. I think that price is kind of steep to give up 61, but if it's to get this guy, there's 2 positions I think that they imminently need a starter that they can get a day one difference maker in this draft. The first is wide receiver. The second is cornerback. And I think that if you get Quinion Mitchell and you put him opposite Carlton Davis, this is their guy. Quinion Mitchell is their guy. He could play man. He could go up against the best receivers. He's fast. He's got ball skills. He's the whole 9. So I think it would. I don't know. I'd have to see how the board shakes out, but yeah, I could see that happening, and I would be okay with it.
What about you? You think it's worth it there?
I'm scared like hell to take a fucking corner that
I
high.
knew you were going to say that.
To be honest with you,
At 15's not that. It's not.
to me that's
Jeff Okuda
that,
high.
you're giving up too much. If you're giving up 61, you're giving up too much.
Well, let's play a quick
my
game.
opinion.
Let's spitball and play a quick game. Who are the best corners in the league that we could think of?
Right now,
Yeah, give me like 5 that come to mind.
Surtain.
He was a first rounder, wasn't he?
Correct.
Yes.
Trayvon Diggs.
Not a first rounder, right?
No.
Wasn't he a second rounder?
Yeah, I don't believe he was.
third rounder.
Jalen Ramsey.
He was a top 5 pick.
Yeah, but
Gardner.
There, listen,
Sauce
if you-
Gardner.
I was backing you up. No, what I was going to say was you don't need to invest a first rounder in a
don't-
corner to be good.
I don't care if they want to take a corner at 29.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually good with that. I don't give a shit about that. What I don't want to give up is that 61 to move up to 15 to get the same guy.
That's very fair.
That makes no sense to me.
Okay, would you feel differently if it was 73 instead of 61?
Yes.
No, I
I would.
wouldn't.
You
I just
wouldn't.
don't. I can't see giving up capital to trade up to get a guy that you can get somebody who's similar to them 10 picks later. I just don't see it.
I just think that there's a drop off from Arnold and Mitchell. I think there's a drop. There's good players. I think
Well, you still got
Wiggins, Cooper DeJean, and McKinstry. It'd be one
Yeah.
of those 3. I think those guys are still difference makers eventually on the Lions, but I just think that there's a drop off, and you could trade. It makes sense to trade for those 2 guys.
Listen, DeJean is a punt returner. Outside him being a fantastic punt returner, if you watch his game, he's okay, but he's not Wiggins and these other guys. He's not.
He's not Wiggins just because of the speed element, but he had Cooper DeJean.
The Rickshaw kid, I think, is better than him.
Cooper DeJean. I like him too. Rakestraw. I love him as well.
Rickshaw kid.
But
the Rickshaw.
The thing with Cooper DeJean is the Lions heavily value, and we'll get there because I have him going in this mock later.
Yeah.
The Lions heavily value versatility, and people don't know what he is yet, but he comes from a school that the Lions know and love, which is Iowa. They hit on 2 Iowa players last year, and he was super productive in an Iowa defense that had one of the best secondaries in the country until he hurt his leg. And he could play corner or safety. So it's threefold. It's not just the returning kicks thing. It's threefold. And that's why I could see them going there, because they do have a need at safety too. So you can work him in as an experiment, see if he works out there on the outside. Right. But he intercepts balls. He has ball skills. He has absurd instincts that you can't teach, even if he's not as physically gifted as the other guys.
After he gets the ball in his hands, that's where he's dangerous.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, moving on to Seattle. Zolo has defensive end Jared Verse going off the board here to Seattle. Jeremiah already has him off the board. He has them taking Troy
Fautanu,
Washington tackle. I knew you were going to like him. You do.
He's the guy I like.
Wait, where did Jared Verse go for Jeremiah?
Jared Verse for Jeremiah went 11 to Arizona. So for you, we didn't really talk about Verse. We kind of jumped over him pretty quick. Jeremiah had him as the first defensive player off the board. What are your thoughts on Jared Verse?
Yeah, I mean, as good as Dallas Turner is, there's not much of a drop off from Dallas Turner to Verse and Leatu Latu from UCLA. There's not those 3 guys are all going to be making plays next year. So I personally just think Seattle has had opportunities to take a DN for a long time, and they haven't done it. And I think they're going to do it this time around.
Well, they took Maffei. Boy, Maffei. Seattle did.
Last year.
Yeah, you got to understand that Pete Carroll's not there anymore, so we don't know what direction they're looking.
They got a defensive coach.
And you like Fatanu. Is that right? Did I get it right?
Fautanu, yeah.
Fautanu.
No,
Why?
he's a mauler. He can do it all. He can run and pass block.
And I could see him going here, too. I could see them taking a tackle. And he makes sense because he played college ball at Seattle.
And
played at
those
Washington.
Tackles at Seattle last year were hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And if you remember, the guys that backed them up stepped right in, did a really good job.
Yeah.
So to bolster that offensive line for Seattle would probably be the best thing they could do. Especially if, are you going to have open competition now with Geno Smith and Sam Howell? We don't know who's going to be the starter there.
This is piggybacking off of that. I actually said in my mock that I could see them going tackle here. I could also see them trading. Fautanu makes tons of sense. He played at Washington, so Seattle will have seen them. I just think they're going to go defense because they have a defensive-minded coach. But if they want to take an O-lineman, this is a sweet spot where you're going to get good value for some really good O-linemen.
They could take that Barton kid, the center.
Barton could play three positions. He could play all positions
guard,
on the line.
Center,
Guard, center, tackle. J.C. Latham.
I know the Lions are high on him.
They are. Amaris Mims fits in. An offensive lineman for sure fits. I just think I got a feeling that
they might go defense.
Yeah, because they might not think that Latu or Verse are going to be there, and it's just in this scenario I have Jared Verse there, and that's why I think they're going to go with them.
At 17, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars. Both you and Daniel Jeremiah have cornerbacks coming off the board here. Daniel Jeremiah, Terrion Arnold, cornerback out of Alabama. Obviously, you already, I believe, have him off the board, if I'm not mixing up names here. You have them taking Cooper DeJean, cornerback, Iowa.
Yeah, they need a DB. And if Terrion Arnold's there, they're going to take Terrion Arnold over Cooper DeJean. But I have him gone, obviously, so I went with DeJean here. And same drill. He could do a lot, and he fits.
I think kind of quietly, Jacksonville has become a team with a lot of need. Could you see them doing anything outside of DB here?
Trading.
Ooh.
I could see them trading. I could see a lot of teams between 15 and 23 trading backward in order to acquire more assets to do exactly what you just said, address a lot of the holes that they now have.
I mean, they do have Mac Jones, so I'm sure you'll be a big fan.
Receiver will be in play for them as well.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Calvin Ridley gone. You have Christian Kirk, Gabe Davis, Zay Jones. That you think that there's some steam behind the receiver thing there?
I think so. You know what? They didn't use the ones they had there last year. So
yeah, that's why I'm like,
who knows what the hell they're doing?
But yeah, I could definitely see them go. I mean, pretty much everything outside of quarterback and running back
toward the end of last year.
Yeah, I mean, they need a lot. Moving on to 18, the Cincinnati Bengals. Obviously, Burrow out last year probably helped them a little bit because they got a pretty decent pick here. Zolo and Daniel Jeremiah agree yet again. Offensive tackle J.C. Latham from Alabama to Cincinnati at 18. Thoughts from both of you?
Got to protect him.
Yeah, Burrow being mauled with injury last year. This has got to
protect this guy.
Versatility stands out with Latham. He's probably going to – I think he's going to end up being a guard, but he can be a tackle. He played tackle in college. And I'll never forget Michigan roasting him in the Rose Bowl, but he was pretty stout before that. He's young. He's a young guy.
Yeah.
And I think that he's raw, but yeah, I mean, Joe Burrow.
I think they'll push him inside to play guard. They need help at guard.
I can see that. And same drill. Versatility is something that screams Holmes and Campbell. I think this is a guy, there's a lot of offensive line chatter with the Lions, and this is a guy that if I see him slipping, especially past like 25, they might make a phone call on him. So this would be a good get for the Bengals because he could play 4 positions on the field.
At 19, it's the Los Angeles Rams. And at 19, Zolo and Daniel Jeremiah agree again. Who do you think it is?
I don't know.
It's a defensive end. It's really the last one off the board.
Chop Robinson?
No.
Latu, defensive end from UCLA, staying home to go to the Rams at 19. obviously they were both in agreement here. Why?
They
Hometown kid.
They need a pass rusher.
He's a monster.
And he plays in their backyard. So he actually, I don't know if you guys know his story. He started at Washington, and he broke his neck. And Washington's like, your career is probably done. And he had to medically retire, but then he got cleared. Eventually, he transferred to UCLA. In terms of if you value stats, if you value the production on the stat sheet, I know you love sacks. His sacks were as high as anyone in this defensive class. He's really productive. He's got a high motor, and I think they just need to, in terms of the fit for the Rams, UCLA guy, and they need someone to replace Aaron Donald. I think you got to start getting going on that defensive line to extend things, and that's a good fit.
He started that last year, actually. So
yeah, but this is a heavier investment than what they did last year.
20. We have the Pittsburgh Steelers on the clock. Obviously, they got their quarterbacks, Russell Wilson and Justin Fields.
At what point do they don't go receiver here?
Yeah, I have that. I didn't pick a receiver here. I have that.
Well,
they're gonna think about it though.
So you have them going tackle. Daniel Jeremiah has them going tackle. Dale Jeremiah has them going with Tyler Guyton, Oklahoma offensive tackle. You have them going with Amarius Mims, Georgia offensive tackle. But you did note that the Steelers could pretty much do anything from cornerback to wide receiver to offensive line here. And realistically, they probably could. Do you think offensive line is the right move here for them?
Yes.
Why?
Because you got to protect whoever's back there. Kenny Pickett got ass pummeled last year along with everybody else.
Quite a few pummelings.
Playing fucking quarterback for them. They couldn't protect him. And it's not because of their fucking running game, because they had two capable running backs. They ran the ball well. It's just they just couldn't protect him.
I can't wait till we get past the draft this week and can talk about we start to recap free agency going into next week after the draft, because this team, to me, especially,
who do you
wild.
think? Who do you think is going to be the starter day one there?
Week 1,
Russell Wilson.
Russell Wilson.
I don't think so.
Who do you think is going to be the starter week 16?
Russell Wilson.
Week 17.
Week 18.
Week 18.
Do you see any scenario where Fields beats him out?
Yes.
I do too.
Yes, I just
think he's so much bigger.
I'm not betting on it though.
Stronger.
But I could see it. To answer your question, I could see it.
Yeah.
But I'm just not. I don't think it's going to happen. Yeah. They need a receiver. I don't have them taking a receiver, but they need a receiver. I know they've made calls on Brandon Ayuk. This is a team I could see moving up a little bit potentially. Brian Thomas from LSU fits in perfectly here. Perfect. That being said, I went with tackle because they've just
makes sense. They got to protect whoever's
they've needed tackles for a while. They haven't invested in this position in a long time, and tackle makes a ton of sense. I went with Guyton. I think is kind of high there considering who's left. I still have Troy Fautanu left on my board.
Yes,
I know
you do.
he's gone for Jeremiah.
Yeah.
I went with Mims. Mims is getting knocked because of his experience. He played in their national championship team 2 years ago. He played in almost every game, but he didn't start. He wasn't a starter until last year, and he was injured for half the year.
Because he was playing behind the monster
exactly
last year.
Exactly. And he was a starter this year, and he was a little banged up. But when he plays, he's good. He's a little green, but you could teach him. His ceiling is sky high. He's a 5-star. Physically gifted. He's 6'7", I think. You might have to fact check me on that.
He was playing behind Jones last year.
Super athletic, and nothing screams athletic offensive lineman like a running quarterback. And I think if you put Wilson or Justin Fields behind, you're running power to the outside, and you have a tackle that could pull if he wants to play guard, and he's pulling and he's moving quick. Good fit. I think it's a good fit.
Next up, we have the Miami Dolphins. At 21, Dale Jeremiah has them taking Graham Barton out of Duke.
Well, you need somebody to replace that all-pro guard you lost.
Zolo has them taking Fuatu.
Troy Fautanu.
I'm never going to get that. Fautanu. I'm never going to get that one right. But he's going there to Miami. Yeah, you need offensive line help in Miami.
They
desperately
replace what they lost.
You want to spew on Barton real quick?
I like Barton. because he can play center, guard. He can play both positions.
He played all
fucking
three.
baller.
He played all. All five realistically positions in college. At some point, he started as a tackle. He had to play some center this year. They're saying he's a center or guard. They're saying he's not a tackle in the pros. He's going to project. It's just going to depend on who drafts him and what they need.
It's a size factor. I don't think he's long enough to play fucking tackle.
I think he's only 6'3".
Could he do it? Yes, but
Yeah,
why subject him to that?
he's a good play. It's a good get for the Dolphins.
Yeah, the guy's
he's a good player.
He'll be a 10-year fucking starter.
I had Fautanu here
Yes,
just
you
because I agree.
He's another one. I love that kid.
We've talked about him. They just need to take an offensive lineman. And on Fautanu, real quick, something that I take major stock in is the Joe Moore Award, which it's given to the best offensive line in college. And Washington won it last year, and he was the anchor piece. And he's Michael Penix was upright fairly often last year, and he's one of the reasons why. He's the main reason why.
Do you guys mind if we just jump real quick to Pittsburgh again?
Yeah.
Let's go back one pick. Their wide receiver room right now, George Pickens, who doesn't want to be there, Van Jefferson, Calvin Austin, Quez Watkins.
Who are these people?
Calvin Austin, Quez Watkins, Denzel Mims, Dez Fitzpatrick,
This is why I thought they were going to go receiver.
Marquez Callaway, Deuce Watts, and Kelly Han Harris.
This is a really deep draft. at
Cordero
wide
Patterson's
receiver.
there.
I forgot about
He followed his old coach. He followed his old coach, Arthur
baby.
Smith, the new offensive coordinator of the Steelers.
Could
so
you
many.
see a scenario where he goes back and plays slot receiver?
Maybe
He's going to be so hard to deal with. in that
usage
position.
could be fun with those running quarterbacks there. The usage.
And
if he's-
what do
he's
you
ready,
do
could
now
be
is
good.
with Najee Harris? Who's the other kid they had? Jalen Warren.
Warren.
And now you got Patterson.
So I do think they're going to end up with a receiver at some point. And again, I told you they can go a number of ways here, and I
Right.
could totally see Brian Thomas going here. I just think they're going to get more bang for their buck if they have the pick of some of these tackles or some of these O linemen before they go. And where they pick in the second round, there's going to be some good receivers there. Some receivers that are going to touch the field.
I have noticed in this draft that they're real heavy in D linemen and offensive linemen, receiver and corner.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're very deep.
Corner drops off after the first 40 picks, but it comes
Yeah.
back again. There's day 3 corners that are good. I think
There-
corner
there's
gets
some
tricky.
guys
though.
they're gonna be picked later.
And that's where the Lions have done their homework, by
Right.
the way, is on those later pick corners that
Right.
you're talking about.
I agree.
Next up, we have the Philadelphia Eagles. Kind of a team that needs a whole lot of everything, but not really a lot of anything.
They had a
Well,
good
I-
offseason. They had a good
They've
free
had a
agency.
really interesting
I mean,
free
just-
agency. I don't know if you've followed
Yeah.
it at all.
Yeah, of course.
You know, they traded what's his name to the Jets? Fuck.
The linebacker.
Riddick.
Yeah.
Son Riddick got traded to the Jets, but they signed Bryce Huff.
Who does
Yeah.
Jeremiah?
Dale Jeremiah has them, interestingly enough, here going with Nate Wiggins, cornerback from Clemson. Zolo has them also taking Nate Wiggins, cornerback from Clemson. I'll call that a consensus. Why?
Yeah, it just seems like they're heavily invested. That was the biggest hole on their team last year is the secondary. That's why they got shredded on the back end, is because Slay is aging a little bit. They were reeling without C.J. Gardner-Johnson, which is
Bradbury.
why they brought him back.
Bradbury got smashed
Yeah.
last year.
Yeah,
I still think a lot of that had to do with scheme and coaching.
yeah, it does.
Yeah,
it does. But you still need the
You
players.
can't take that team the year prior that led the league in sacks. The closest team was fucking 15 behind them, and say that, okay, well, Slay and Bradbury aren't good corners. That's not true. That's not true. It was scheme. They weren't getting to the quarterback like they were the year prior.
Well, Wiggins is a hell of a cover corner. I think he's a little bit more of a press corner. I don't think he's more zone. Excuse me. I don't think he's much of the press man. But Slay is press man, and this is Slay's replacement down the road. So you have an interesting mix at corner if you go here. And Wiggins was the fastest corner on the board in the draft, and you can't beat speed. I think he's going to be an asset. I do think they go DB here just based on everything they've done in the offseason. I just think that everything was geared towards retooling this defense. I don't think they need as much help in the front seven. I do think they need help in the back. And Wiggins, in my opinion, over McKinstry is probably the better fit for the Eagles on the board here.
Also, don't forget they did add C.J. Gardner-Johnson
Exactly.
back into the mix in the secondary there. So, I mean,
That's where their holes were at safety and corner last year.
So you got your safety, you draft a corner. Yeah, makes perfect sense to me. Next up, Jeremiah has Arizona owning this pick after trading with Minnesota, and Arizona taking Brian Thomas Jr. Obviously, with Arizona trading back earlier and then taking Jared Verse in his, they now get their receiver here at 23. Zolo, you have them taking Byron Murphy, defensive tackle from Texas.
Yeah, they're going to have a pool of picks between 23 and 35. They might I think do they have 2 second-round picks? They might even end up with more. But I think they have 2. So they're going to have 35, and I think they might have like 39 or 40 maybe. No, the Commanders have 36. Regardless, they're going to have a pool of picks at some point, and I think they're going to spend 2 of those picks on defensive linemen. I think they're going to start to rebuild their D-line. And that's why I went with Byron Murphy's the first D-line or D-tackle off the board. A lot of people, apparently he's moving on a lot of people's boards this week, and he might go even earlier than this. I think this would be a hell of a coup if they were able to get him at 23. It'd be a hell of a pick.
So Arizona right now owns 4, 27, 35, and then 66.
66, okay.
Daniel Jeremiah has them taking Brian Thomas Jr., LSU wide receiver. We've mentioned his name a whole bunch. He's kind of the one right behind the rest of the guys. Mm-hmm. How do we think he stacks up to the Odunze neighbors? Because if you put Marvin Harrison in a class of his own and then drop down to Neighbors and Odunze as your 2.
I don't put Harrison in that class.
Neither do I.
No.
I think
Neighbors and Odunze are as good as he is.
All three are in. I think that's the same tier, believe it or not.
So
I think that's tier 1.
So then we're putting Brian Thomas at the top of tier 2?
Yeah.
How does he stack up to those guys?
You want to go first on Brian Thomas? Yeah. He's an X. He's an X receiver. He's 6'3". He had a 38-inch vertical. I think he ran like a 4.34 or something like that. You'll have to fact check me. This is Kelvin Johnson. I see Kelvin Johnson and Brian Thomas.
A little smaller.
And this is the guy I think that the Lions will – another guy that I think if he's there, that's one thing. A lot of teams are going to be salivating for Brian Thomas if he makes it past 21. I think a lot of teams are going to be thinking, okay, we need to make a move. I have him going a little bit later in my scenario. This is a guy I could see Brad Holmes trading up for. And I know they've talked to Brian Thomas as well. I know they talked to him at the Combine. I don't know if he had a top 30 visit here, but they've talked to Brian Thomas. I think he's excellent, and I think that would be a hell of a get for the Cardinals. Who did Jeremiah have them taking at 11?
Well, they traded. Oh, Jared Verse.
Yeah, I mean, if I told you they're going to take a D-line. It's going to be some combination of this, D-line, wide receiver. I'm with Jeremiah. I just have it a little bit inverted, and I think that this is going to be a hell of a pick if they end up with Brian Thomas or with Byron Murphy, like I said. I think either way they're going to get someone good.
Next up is the Cowboys, who fans are kind of up in arms about how quiet the Cowboys offseason has been and that their head coach is still there. But more on that in free agency next week. Right now, they're on the clock at 24. And Zolo and Daniel Jeremiah both agree again.
Remember, I did this 2 weeks ago.
That the Cowboys are going to take the big white guy, Jackson Powers Johnson, offensive lineman from Oregon.
Yeah, center or guard. He's probably going to play center for them. And
they need something.
How many offensive linemen did they lose this offseason?
Well, Travis Frederick.
Zach Martin gone, right?
Retired, no?
He retired?
Who went to New York?
Was that Zach Martin? I don't know.
Zach Martin went to the Jets?
No. Hold on. I'm pulling this up as we speak. Right now, Tyler Smith, TJ Bass, Brock Hoffman, Zach Martin's still there.
Okay.
And Terrence Steele. So
who retired?
They lost Frederick.
Frederick's
gone. And I'm trying to. I think there's another starter from last year that's gone.
They lost 2 offensive linemen.
Either way, they lost 2 starting offensive linemen. They have to do this here pretty much. Why this guy though? Versatility.
He's good. So center prospects don't usually go. I mean, this is the range in which they go, but there's not blue chip center prospects every year. There happens to be 3 in this draft, and they're all going to go in the top 40, 45 picks. He's a true center, whereas Barton's going to be a converted center. Jackson Powers Johnson is a converted center, or is a true center. Can play guard if you need him to, and he's just mean. This is another guy that the Lions have been linked to. He's a nasty motherfucker. He's a football player, and the Cowboys have not been shy. It's worked for them for 30 years, even though they haven't won shit since then. But one thing that they do have success is when they take offensive linemen. It's worked for them, and I think.
And don't forget that Jimmy did make up with Jerry, and he's going to be consulting them now.
Consulting.
Extending. Next up, the Green Bay Packers. You have them taking offensive line, specifically Graham Barton. Dale Jeremiah has them taking offensive line, specifically Amarius Mims. We've discussed both of those guys. David Bakhtiari's been injury-ridden. They're going to go offensive line, correct? I mean,
well, they have to retool. They've started that, but they need to do a little more. They got to protect Jordan Love.
It's the next phase. They have all the skill players on offense, and I think they like what they're doing schematically, defensively, where they could just
and
plug in a
everybody
guy.
thinks that Green Bay will be in the hunt for the Super Bowl this year.
not everybody.
That's what I'm seeing a lot through.
I disagree. I think Atlanta has a better odds. Atlanta has better odds to come out of the NFC than Green Bay.
The Atlanta thing.
Just saying.
Okay?
Just saying.
If they don't go offensive line, the only other thing I could see happening here is they bolster an already pretty strong defensive line, and a guy that I could see going is Johnny Newton from Illinois, who's an absolute bastard, a guy I would be very happy with if he ended up here. He's slipping a little bit because he's had a foot injury, but he was one of those, if he tested during the combine, all that, he'd have a really high RAS score, and he'd be one of those guys that people key in on for their athleticism and a disruptor. And I could see them thinking that here and pairing him with Rashawn Gary, and it would look really good. But they need offensive line help. This is
they got
good
Devontae
spot.
Wyatt too.
Yeah.
This is going to be an interesting one here. At 26, we have Tampa Bay, and Zolo has them taking Alabama cornerback Kool-Aid McKinstry. And Daniel Jeremiah has them taking Missouri edge rusher Darius Chop Robinson.
Hold on.
Chop
They're
Robinson.
They're two different people.
You got two different guys.
Two different people.
Do I?
They're both D Robinson, and
they're both D Robinson.
Yeah.
So I apologize.
Darius Robinson.
Missouri Darius Robinson then, rather than
Chop
Penn
Robinson's
State
from Penn State.
Robinson. Okay. So Darius Robinson from Missouri to Tampa at 26. Thoughts?
What do you think?
I mean,
Reach?
I love him as a prospect.
I know the Lions are high on him.
Mhm. You could call him a bit of a reach. You can. Go ahead. You go first.
Because he's green.
Mhm.
He's green.
So, but you know the reason he's green?
He's got a lot of length.
He's bit as a edge rusher. He's kind of tall. But here's the thing. This is why. So jumping ahead, I have the Lions taking him at 29.
Isn't that funny that you have the Lions taking him and he has Tampa taking him?
Mm-hmm.
And spoiler, he has the Lions taking Kool-Aid McKinstry.
Yeah.
Essentially, Tampa and Detroit swapping.
I could see it shaking out that way too. The reason people are high on Darius Robinson, and I'm going to speak from Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell's perspective, he's another football player. He is a football player. He loves the game. He's met with the Lions on all fronts, and I think he was at their local day as well because he's from here. He's from, I think, Canton, maybe. He's from Canton, Plymouth, or he's from one of those schools. The Lions are going to love him. Again, a theme with the Lions, something that they're obsessed with is versatility. And he could play on the interior. On pass rushing, you can leave him first through third, you could leave him on the outside opposite Hutchinson. And his closing speed isn't that great because he's so big, but he's a disruptor. Like he still has the pass rushing prowess, and he still has the hurries that Uncle Sam can't stand. He doesn't have the sacks to go with it. But if you move him on third down, you move him to the inside, which he played inside in college. He was very comfortable playing D tackle. And then all of a sudden you have Hutchinson, you have McNeil, you have Darius Robinson, and you have on the outside whoever it is, Marcus Davenport. It's probably going to be James Houston on third downs. If those are your four, that group is going to kill a quarterback. Reader's not going to be there on pass rushing downs, I don't think. He can be. But I don't think he's going to be over McNeil. So that's why I have him there. His versatility is great. People don't like him as a prospect and think he might be a bit of a reach in the first round just because he doesn't have the stats that go with it. And on top of that, he's still a little raw and his length works against him somehow. But if you watch him, he plays from whistle to whistle. He plays from sideline to sideline. And I saw this one play where he smoked someone from Georgia after the play. And I was like, damn, this guy's. He would fit right in here. So that's why I have him mocked here. I'd be okay with Kool-Aid McKinstry here as well, just because he's the best corner left on the board. And I think Kool-Aid McKinstry would start day one here as well.
Honest to God, I could see Tampa taking more towards McKinstry than I could a defensive end. I mean,
well, they got to replace Davis.
They got to replace their secondaries.
Yeah, Winfield.
Yeah.
Who else left there?
I think Winfield's still
Whitehead's
there.
gone.
I think they tagged Winfield, but Carlton Davis obviously
he's gone. And so was what's his name signed with somebody else? He didn't sign with the Bucks. Who am I thinking?
Is it? I'm not positive off the top of my head, but
I don't know.
Yeah, I could see McKinstry.
1,000%. I think McKinstry would be a really good fit there too. Next up at 27, we have Arizona again. As far as Daniel Jeremiah's board goes, because he had them trading back. I
did some fuckery here.
You have the Panthers sending pick 33, 65, and 101, and a 2025 third. The Cardinals for pick 27 and 104, and the Carolina Panthers taking wide receiver Brian Thomas, LSU, here at number 27. We broke him down pretty good already. Big body guy. Carolina, is there anything Carolina really doesn't need outside of quarterback?
They need a receiver.
Yeah.
They told Xavier Leggett that they're going to take him if he's there in the second round. I think they jump up here. They see Thomas slide, and it's in the same family because the Cardinals could make this pick here at 27 and end up taking Brian Thomas, which he had them going at 23.
Correct. He had them take, and it's funny enough. You said that you wouldn't be surprised to see the Cardinals take Byron Murphy at 23.
Mm-hmm.
He has him take him here at 27.
It makes sense. But in terms of, I have the Panthers jumping up because the Bills are going to be fiending for a wide receiver. They have no pass catchers at this point except for Kincaid. So I could see the Bills wanting Brian Thomas and standing pat. I think a lot of people, if Brian Thomas is here, I think a lot of people are
I'm still trying to figure out what they're doing.
Who? Buffalo?
Yeah.
Let's talk about
Let's talk about it. Pick. Buffalo at 28. Zolo has them taking Adonai Mitchell, wide receiver from Texas. Did I say that right?
Yep.
And Jeremiah has them taking John Newton, Illinois.
It's the first time I've adamantly disagreed with him, I'd say, because I think they need a wide receiver here.
I
can see Johnny Newton. You agree?
I agree.
And it'll be one of the Texas guys.
But they need a fucking receiver, though.
At this time, at this point in time, they're going to need a receiver. And I think
Gabe Davis is gone.
Exactly.
What are you going to do without Gabe
Stephon Diggs is gone.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, Diggs wanted out of there anyway.
I mean, I can't fathom how Buffalo
they need a receiver.
They need a receiver. It's going to be one of the Texas guys. It's going to be Mitchell or it's going to be Worthy, and they're going to get a good one if it's those two guys.
They're going to go with Worthy because he ran the.
You want to hear a joke? You want to hear a joke? Bills receiver room as of today: Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuel.
That's very impressive.
Mac Hollins.
Listen, I don't hate.
Hold on.
I don't hate the Curtis Samuel.
Justin Shorter, Andy Isabella, KJ Hamler.
They could always put DeMar Hamlin out there and let him play wide receiver. DeMar.
Is DeMar still on? DeMar is still on the team.
He's still there.
Shocked.
Johnny Newton is a fit. Just entertaining this real quick. Johnny Newton is an excellent fit for them.
That'd be a nice little fucking inside push they got there.
And he's just a disruptor. He's 4 downs. He plays all 4 downs. He can get to the quarterback. He can destroy running backs. He's
defensive line wise though, I think they're pretty solid there. With Espinenza and I really don't think they need defensive line there. I think they need receiver more than defensive.
They desperately need a receiver. I mean, they're desperate for a receiver. Defensive line, their starters right now: Greg Russo,
Yep.
Daquan Jones, Ed Oliver, and Vaughn Miller still there with Espinoza.
Right? Espinoza.
Epensier. I think it's Epensier, isn't it?
No,
I don't know what the
Espinoza.
fuck it is.
No, I think it's
He's-
EPS.
It's EPEN.
Espinoza.
No, the S is after the P.
It's Epinenza.
Espinoza.
I thought it was
Epinenza.
Epensier or something.
It might be. Who the fuck knows that guy? But yeah, wide receiver definitely. I think the biggest position of need. Next up, hometown pick, very own Detroit Lions at 29. Like I said, Jeremiah has them taking Kool-Aid McKinstry. I think a lot of people have him taking Kool-Aid McKinstry.
I'd be cool with it.
You have them taking Darius Robinson, not Chop Robinson. Good thing we cleared that up. 1, which one do you think is more likely? 2, which one would you be happier with? 3, what do you think ultimately happens?
I think, okay, so more likely at this point, I think is they don't do the obvious thing when they pick. Outside of Sewell and Aiden Hutchinson, who are both no-brainer picks. Since then, they don't do the no-brainer thing. So I don't think there is an obvious thing because people think they're going to go offensive line here. People think they're going to go Zach Frazier is a name that I keep seeing like crazy, which I'd be okay with. Wouldn't love it as much as in round 1. I love the concept of pass rusher, even though I don't love what's opposite Hutchinson. They still have depth there. Kool-Aid McKinstry would make me very happy if he's on the board, and I would go with him because I think he's going to play. And they love Alabama. They loved it last year. They love Alabama DBs. And fun fact, the Lions have taken the player that has worn number 1 at Alabama the last 2 years. 2 years ago, it was Jamison Williams. Last year, it was Jahmyr Gibbs. So Kool-Aid McKinstry wears number 1. Just breaking down McKinstry real quick, he's one of Saban's favorite players that's ever played for him. He's extremely smart. He started day 1 as a freshman. His numbers against are so, like, of course, Terry and Arnold usurped him a little bit this year, but the numbers that he gave up against this year and the last 2 years, like, they're incredible. They're absolutely incredible. His problem is his speed. His speed isn't great. He doesn't have great linear speed, which can be an issue, but the tape speaks for itself on Kool-Aid McKinstry, and he's got great hands. He's got great size. Speed can't be taught, but his speed is good enough. And he didn't run at the combine because he had a Jones fracture in his foot, but he did run at his pro day, and with a Jones fracture still in his foot, he ran like a 4.44, that's good enough.
Fine.
That's good for corner 2 for the Lions. I think he is a prototypical shutdown corner. I would be very happy with him, and I do think he would be starting here eventually if they drafted him. I just don't know if he makes it to that pick. If he's there, they've done their homework on him. They love Alabama. It's a fit, and I think they would take him. I just don't have him here. It's the only reason I didn't mock him here.
Also, in his notes here, Jeremiah had said that it was a very tough call for him here between McKinstry and Chop Robinson.
I could see Chop Robinson going here. Chop Robinson is raw. People don't like his so they love his athleticism, and they like there's stuff that you can't teach, but they do have to teach him some other stuff. So if they draft Chop Robinson, the Lions wouldn't
He's
be
a project.
He's a project. He's not a day 1 difference maker. But again, his tape speaks for itself. He did some damage in the Big Ten this year.
Out of those 3, who do you like there? Who makes the most sense, and who's the best fit?
I think you go best O-lineman on the board right now.
And people think they're going to do that.
Can I ask you? Hold
People
on.
think they're going to do that.
Do you think every team in the first round should just draft offensive line?
No, I don't. But I'm going to say this.
Every single team you say they
the
need
kid
to
from
go offensive
Oklahoma
line.
is still there.
That'd be Guyton. I still have Guyton on the board.
And Guyton is a fucking
Jeremiah does
monster.
not. Jeremiah does not.
No.
I think Guyton's great. I'm not taking him here. People agree with you, though, that the chatter is that they're going to take an offensive lineman. And the one, like a guy that I love, I just don't love at this pick is Zach Frazier, who's a Dan Campbell guy. He's a all-state wrestler for 4 years.
Yeah, but you know what?
Mean.
I think you can get him at 61.
Not at 61,
You
but
don't think so?
you can trade up to like 45 and get him.
I think he'll be there.
But that's the thing. The Lions reached for Jack Campbell and Jahmyr Gibbs last year, and they got roasted for it, and it worked out. So that's the thing. Like they're not. We're not thinking like Brad Holmes. I agree.
It's either you take that kid or you take Guyton. That's my thing because You don't know how long Ragnow is going to be able to hold up.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, the guy that playing left tackle for you is his best years are behind him.
We can do this right now. There's technically questions at, we'll call it 3.5 out of the 5 positions.
Correct.
Ragnow could be in his last year, and
Correct.
there's no better time. This is why I like Zach Frazier or Barton or
Right.
even if they took Jackson Powers Johnson here, he's not going to play next year, but I wouldn't be mad. I wouldn't be mad.
I think he's going to play. I think he's going to play guard.
He wouldn't play over Zeitler or
I think they'll play guard.
I don't think it would be this year. But to your point,
Yeah.
Decker's in a contract year. They want to work something out, but he was pretty banged up last year, and he could be on his way out. So I could see tackle, and you cement that with Sewell going forward. Zeitler's gone after this year. Glasgow, they signed to a 3-year deal that doesn't overshadow his age. He's still older, so you're going to need a guard eventually. And Ragnow could be in his last year, and he's been banged up since the moment he got here. The guy's missing a toe. So I could see, I would be okay with an interior lineman here. I'd prefer if they traded back and got it. I can see tackle, and most people think that they're going to go offensive line here. So I could see it.
I like Guyton because Guyton has size, and you can push him in to play guard.
Well,
if you have to, push him in that left side and play guard. Imagine him and Decker on the left side, fucking lining up, punching you in the mouth.
Let's talk about Baltimore real quick before we talk more about Guyton. At 30, Baltimore Ravens. Daniel Jeremiah has them taking Cooper DeJean, who you already have off the board.
Mm-hmm.
You have them taking Chop Robinson.
Mm-hmm.
2 guys we've broken down pretty well. Do you think secondary or defensive front is more important for Baltimore, and why?
If Cooper DeJean's there, they're going to take him. They're going to add. They love to add DBs. I just don't have them there, so I could totally envision that. I can envision them taking Kamari Lassiter from Georgia. Like, there's got DBs I could see them taking, but I think they can use the help on their D line. I think they can.
Well,
I think
just
that pass
because
rush would be
the
good.
guys that they've drafted, the kid out of Michigan's been hurt the last 2 years, so they got to figure out what they're going to do with him. Are you going to give up on him? Get Chop Robinson in there, or what are you going to do?
Depth is always good at that position.
I don't think you can ever have enough pass rushers.
Nope.
I think if it was up to you, you'd just have offensive line versus defensive line and just have them fight to the death and have no other positions behind them.
Rugby?
You would just have a bunch of big dudes naked wrestling
in
each
a
other.
perfect world, that's what it would be.
31, the San Francisco 49ers. Jeremiah has them taking edge rusher Chop Robinson off the board. Obviously,
they're not going edge rusher.
You had him going at 30. Zolo has them taking Tyler Guyton.
I think they could use a tackle.
Wow.
Trent Williams is getting old.
All I can say is wow. They got Guyton. That's a. I think he's.
I haven't heard you say wow yet. That's a perfect pick for your eyes.
I think he's underrated. I think he's underrated. You watch the tape on him, he's fucking a monster.
So either a tackle's going to slip into them, whether it be Mims or Guyton, the third name, which I didn't have. I had a choice to do it here, and I didn't, is Jordan Morgan from Arizona, who a lot of people are having mocked to the Lions at this point. I think a tackle is going to slip to them, and it's going to be a good one. It might not be a guy that even plays next year, but it's a guy that they could sit on for when Trent Williams moves on or whatever, and it'll fit. And in this case, I went with Guyton over Morgan. I know Guyton was gone and Jeremiah's, but I think that there's going to be a slew of offensive linemen that go between 25 and 32, and they're a team they're the biggest candidate to take an offensive lineman.
At 32, we have the Kansas City Chiefs. And I think there's a big question mark now at receiver with Rashee Rice being as promising as he was all of last year, now facing, I believe it's 6 felony charges in the state of Texas after. He's
going to be catching balls from Pat Mahomes Sr. in jail instead of Pat Mahomes Jr.
Yeah, he's going to be catching balls, but it won't be from Mahomes.
It might be, but no, Zola's right. It might be from his dad. It says Mahomes' dad got arrested in Texas on a DUI.
Right. Don't you know who I am?
Funny enough.
We have the same guy going here?
No, because the guy that Jeremiah has here, you already have off the board, but they're from the same position, from the same school. At 32, Jeremiah has the Chiefs taking Adonai Mitchell. Zolo has them taking the other Texas wide receiver, Xavier Worthy. And Jeremiah's explanation was,
Mitchell's actually a better receiver.
well, he has him off the board already. And
Right.
Jeremiah said that Xavier Worthy going here is too comparable to Hollywood Brown. So that's why he has Mitchell going to the Chiefs. Hypothetically, if this was different, is there another wide receiver you could see going here, or do you think this is a perfect fit?
Xavier Leggett. Or Lamb McConkey fits in from the white kid from Georgia. There's going to be a whole run on wide receivers on Friday night at the beginning of day 2. There's going to be a massive run on wide receivers because a ton of teams are going to need them, and there's like 5 or 6 guys that are going to go in that round. Ricky Pearsall, Lamb McConkey. One of Worthy or Mitchell is going to make it to round 2. McCaffrey's a day 3 guy, but he's going to go at some point. Roman Wilson from Michigan probably isn't going to get back past Jim Harbaugh at 37. Who else is there? Ricky Pearsall is one of my favorite receivers in the draft from Florida. He's super athletic, crazy, can play X receiver. I could see the Lions going after Ricky
And
Pearsall.
you think that run happens right there starting around 32?
Yeah, the Chiefs are going to take a receiver. I went with Worthy because he had a 4.21 40. It's the fastest 40, I think, unofficial 40 in the history of the draft, if I remember correctly. It's faster than John Ross's from a couple years ago. And I think that's your Tyreek Hill.
There's a funny story about that. And Bo Jackson. And at his pro day, when his coach come up to him, he did his 40 and he pulled up about 15 yards to go. He pulled up and he's like, "Would you please give these damn people what they want?" And he was like, "Yeah." So what he did was he told the kid to grab his bag, open the back door. He goes, "There's no way I'm going to be able to stop at that short a distance." He said it was only like 15 to 16 yards between the end of the run and the wall. So he told him to open the doors. I'm just going to go put my bag and shit in my car because I'm just going to get my car and leave afterwards. And rumor has it that my man broke 4 flat at 230 pounds.
Do you understand what kind of feat that would be like? Do
you understand that they clocked him at sub 4?
Listen to me.
I'm telling you what
you're breaking news right now.
I'm telling you what he said.
First time I've ever
why is this the first time?
Well, because this is Bo was telling the story. That's what they had told him. That one guy had him unofficial at breaking sub 4.
Okay.
At 230 pounds.
Zolo has a couple add-ons to his top 32.
Okay.
At number 44, he has the Las Vegas Raiders taking Michael Penix, quarterback from Washington.
I don't have a problem with that.
I think they could be patient and either trade up and get him or they can get him in the second round. I don't think the only team they have to worry about is the Broncos. Or if one of those teams that has one of those high picks that should take a quarterback, if they don't take one, like the Patriots.
See, that's what I think the Patriots are not guaranteed to take a quarterback at that spot. I think they might take the best player at that spot.
I think if they don't take a quarterback, they're trading. I think they need a quarterback.
Yeah.
There's good quarterbacks, so they should get one. Anyways, I threw that in there for you because obviously the Raiders had a pick already, but I think Michael Penix ends up slipping to them in the second round, or they could trade back up and get him in the second round.
Any one of those 4 teams at the end of that first round are going to be players because some of these teams are going to take a fucking player and then try to move back up at the end of that round. To grab the Penixes, the Bo Nix,
or there's just a
the
guy
McCarthy.
There's just a guy that you value high.
Correct.
There's a guy that you value high that's still sitting there. And it's like, let's go get him. That's how it works.
Yeah. I say the quarterback because they want the 5th-year option.
But if they go in the second round, so you're saying trading back into the first round, because if they go in the second round, I don't think they get a 5th-year option.
They're not.
Yeah, you only
don't.
get that as a first.
That's
round.
why I'm saying them guys, the back end of the first round, they're going to be players because if them guys decide to go best player and then come back and try to hit that quarterback on the get around, because your top 3 guys are going to be gone.
Right.
May Daniels and fucking what's his name is
Listen,
gone.
I know you can't stand him, and cousin Steven, if you're still watching this, I know you can't stand him either. You'll always be wrong about it, though, and Michigan will always be national champions. But J.J. McCarthy's not making it past the top 12.
He's not a first-round quarterback.
He is.
He's not.
He is.
Somebody might jump up and grab him late.
No, he's a first-round quarterback.
No,
he's going to go 4 probably or 5.
No way the guy's a fucking first round.
And he's the only one in this draft that's won a national championship. I don't know.
Anyway.
Okay. I think that was a great.
He had 22
There's more
touchdowns.
teams.
Hey, he had 22 touchdowns this year.
We can cherry pick stats and go through all the quarterbacks that got drafted. Tom Brady, how many touchdowns?
Caleb Williams had 50. He had 22.
2 different offenses. do the rest of mine real quick.
You have
Because there's teams that hadn't had a pick.
you had the Houston Texans at 42 taking Johnny Newton, defensive tackle from Illinois. He's off the board.
I don't think he'll be there.
He might not be.
No, I don't think he gets past the Lions if he drops that far.
And then at 54, you have the Browns taking Junior Colson, linebacker from Michigan. No thoughts? You didn't even have anything to say about that one?
No. No. I don't think much of him.
Listen, the Michigan hatred.
It's not hatred. I just don't.
You want to know what's interesting about what you just did? Your face was over here about 1.5 feet away from the mic, and then you turned
keep
into
moving
the
up.
microphone to cough. And I just want to point out, I know that you keep getting annoyed every time I nudge this closer to you, but there were multiple people in the chat today saying that you were too quiet and they wanted to hear more out of you. So that's the only reason why I'm doing it.
Anyway,
So we need
talking draft right here. We're talking serious business.
the
don't like
face
that, it's too
closer
bad.
to
Business,
the.
then
I
don't
think
lean back in
Wednesday-
the chair.
Shut the fuck up.
So go ahead.
You say, right?
I want to see if we're on the same page.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Wednesday the 3 of us will run a mock between the 3 of us.
That's what we're going to do on Wednesday. So now that we've previewed the draft a little bit, broke down some of the names, went off of Zolo's mock and Jeremiah's mock on Wednesday.
I like yours better than his.
Him and I were online.
You guys were online.
You're
with a lot
pretty
of shit.
much there.
Wednesday, we're all going to come to the table with our mocks, updated mocks, and we are going to do our official Tip Balls mock draft. So that way,
Okay.
after Thursday, we can go back and see how good we actually did.
Okay.
But outside of that, do we have any questions from the chat today? Where are y'all going to be during the draft? I believe that we are. Well, I am going to be downtown. I think Zolo's going to be downtown. I don't know where Thimbledick's going to be. Where's that?
I don't know. Home.
And I'm
Give
sure.
it handies.
I'm sure.
You guys didn't invite me to come downtown.
Woodward
I'll be at-
Handies?
I'll be at
Why
home.
would anybody invite you anywhere?
I don't have a plan.
Straight up disrespectful. All right.
If I had a plan, I'd let you know what it is, but I don't have a plan.
Yeah, we have to game plan a little bit.
I'll
So
be at home.
answer to President Baker. We are still
Shocker
game.
there.
I'll be watching it on
Big
TV.
Shocker.
Which is Loco recovering from surgery well?
Yes. Yes, he's doing well.
Did we ever figure out what?
He's almost ready to pummel Bruce's eyeball.
Did we ever figure out what Mr. Cat's skin condition was?
Oh my god,
He has ear infection.
it's an ear infection or a skin condition.
Yeah, he had an ear infection. He's got a little blocked tear duct in his eye.
Oh shit!
And we gave him a little salve for his little spot. It's a depression thing because he hasn't been able to see Loco. They're brothers. They play every day. They haven't been able to play in
Because
over
Loco got his nuts
almost
chopped
2
off.
weeks.
He got his nuts.
Well, yeah, because you can't have. You're
Yeah.
supposed to keep them separate.
So where do
Yeah.
you keep Loco where the other ones are going?
He's in my daughter Diana's room.
So Sarah's cat has had major skin condition issues for over a year, and he had this spot on his tail that just kept getting bigger, and now it's all over his body.
Really?
Yeah, it's in different spots.
You
It's
have
not like
more
crazy.
than one animal? or-
No, but it's an allergy thing. The cat had my uncle's a vet, and we've been dealing with this for a long time. The cat has some sort of cellulitis essentially, and got bad intel. The vet stopped giving him the shot, but he should have been getting the shot, and we started giving him a steroid and then Convenia, which
Okay.
is like a antibiotic for animals. And we had the tail wrapped so he couldn't lick it because he's licking it and spreading
Right.
it all over. And the cat's tail has gotten a little bit better.
Did we just do our first ever?
Here's what you need to do.
Tipped cats.
You need to
Tipped
get.
cats.
No,
hey,
I'm not producing.
you need to
that
get him a friend.
one. I'm leaving for that.
You need to get him a friend.
We need a second cat.
This cat's nasty. He's really
You have like
mean.
10. Give him one of yours.
Listen,
Really
Yeah, why don't you
mean.
donate a cat?
There's nobody meaner than Mr. Cat. That motherfucker right there. He's
Outside
straight up the devil, dude. He looks at me, his eyes get all fucking dilated, and he's looking
into
at
the
me
mic.
like-
Talk into the mic.
I am talking into the fucking mic.
You're not talking into the
right
mic.
in front of me.
Turn towards the camera.
It's
you don't
fucking right in front of me.
Camera's right here.
No, the camera's right there.
Whatever.
We're at all camera.
But anyway,
Don't-
I
Anyway,
don't like these lights.
well, this is what makes us look good.
I don't
all right?
like it. I don't like this shit.
I just can't.
I don't know
see
what's-
TV
You gotta
is
lose
the
these
problem.
fucking lights, dude.
But my angle right here, I look like the thumb from Spy
We're
Kids.
I
keeping the
can't
lights.
see anything, dude.
I
I'm
like-
blind,
I-
bro.
I
It's
like-
you couldn't see
this-
the
I
TV
like that.
regardless.
Yeah, I could do that. I got to turn into it. I gotta work on work. This is
You're
day
used to
one.
looking
Correct.
at the other
Yeah,
one. Yeah.
I
It's
gotta
gonna
work-
take time.
Okay,
Like
Fine.
we're him and I are gonna be spitting on each other at some point.
He's never looked better.
Yeah, he's glowing right now.
He has the best camera angle.
He does. It's perfect, per usual. Anyways, anything to add before we close out today? We're gonna come back Wednesday with more draft coverage, but anything to add?
Chiqueech.
Anything to add? Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Tip Balls Podcast. We will be back Wednesday with our official first round mock draft. Make sure you are following us on Instagram and X at Tip Balls, TikTok at Tip Balls Podcast. If you didn't ring the bell and subscribe on YouTube yet, you need to so you get notified when we go live. And if you are listening to us on Spotify or Apple Music, remember to follow us on there. Join us in the chat Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 5 when we go live. I got to rehash this in my head a few more times. It's been too much time off, but we're happy to be back. Thank you guys so much for listening. You will hear us on Wednesday.